Good morning, afternoon, or evening, depending on where in the world you are watching. Welcome back to Afternoons with Aces, presented by Tom Simkiss and Lee Briggs. This is the fifth, and judging by the virtual attendance so far, the most look forward to the sessions thus far in our cloud reporting series. Today we'll be speaking about doing an ad hoc analysis in SmartView. SmartView is a Microsoft Office plugin that integrates nicely with Oracle Cloud ERP and EPM. This session is important, and it may be watched in conjunction with our prior sessions on connecting to SmartView and using SmartView ribbon and the Essbase ribbon. It may also be reviewed prior to watching our sessions on using a private connection to connect to OTBI or some of our other reporting sessions. All right, so quick agenda for today's session. We will quickly go through some introductions. Lee will talk about the browser plugin to allow the drill down to the cloud applications. That's something that he will show you where to get that and why it's important. He will go through creating a shared connection. He will then talk about some ad hoc analyses, and then we'll go through optional dimensions and the things that you need to do to get this thing to bring back data. Lee, you want to do an introduction?
Absolutely, Tom. Thank you. My name is Lee Briggs. I've been working with the Oracle applications for the best part of 25 years. I've worked with EBS for the first 12 years of that, and for the last 13 years, pretty much since Oracle Cloud has been available generally, I've been working with Cloud. I am the Cloud ERP Team Director here at Creel, now an SMX company. I am an Oracle ACE. I got my Oracle ACE-ness in 2013. I started as an ACE associate. I'm now an ACE Pro. I've been an ACE Pro for 8 years, I think. And I am the first Star Presenter of the Year award winner, awarded from OATUG. That was in 2014.
Oh, thanks, Lee. My name is Thomas Simkiss. I am the Commercial and SLED Practice Director for Creel Consulting, now an SMX company. I've been with Creel since 2017. I have my Bachelor of Arts in Economics and Business Administration from Ursinus College, and I got my JD from the James A. Beasley School of Law of Temple University. I've been working with Oracle for the better part of 25 years. Started out as an end user when I was a staff accountant at a company called Real Treatment Centers, and they implemented Oracle, and I liked it so much I decided to get into consulting, and I've been doing it for the most part ever since. I'm also an Oracle ACE. I got my ACE in 2014, 1 year after Lee. As another side note, Lee and I have worked together through various companies for the better part of 22 years. So Lee is generally referred to in our small circle as the first ACE, and I am always referred to as the second ACE. I am also the OETUG Star Presenter of the Year award winner in 2017, again after Lee got his.
Okay, so in the previous session we talked about installing SmartView, getting that installed on your machine. But there's still something we need to do on there. In order to be able to drill down to the balances, so to get back to the cloud applications, you will need a plugin. So Oracle does keep its notes up to date on the plugins. Now the plugins I'm actually showing here have been the same plugins for the last 3 or 4 years, but depending upon the browser you're looking for, we've got a few different areas to go to. Now, if you're using Firefox as your primary browser, you can get the extension by searching for SmartView in the Firefox add-ins download site, or you can go directly to that link. You do have the specific link out there. You click add to Firefox and then follow some prompts and it starts enabling you. If you're using Chrome, like most of the guys at Creel do, then you go to, you're looking to install the SmartView for Office web extension from the Chrome Web Store. Again, you can still get this by searching for SmartView or going directly to the link. If you are a Microsoft Edge user, then congratulations, you're one of the few folks who uses Edge. If you're using Edge, then in the top right of Edge, you click on the 3 dots and look for your extensions. Now, here's the important one for this. It's not actually a Microsoft plugin. At the bottom left of the screen, you go to allow extensions for other stores. Once you have done that, you've allowed that, then you just follow the Chrome instructions we put in that middle section there. So they are really the plugins you need to get installed there. Okay, we've got our machine up and ready to go. We're going to now look at creating a shared connection, so get connected there. So I've got Excel open. I've gone to my SmartView tab, and I'm going to go to the Options button that's available to me. Typically, this opens up on the Advanced tab. So we're going to go to the Advanced option on the left-hand side, and we will have a URL that we are connecting to. So you can have one connection at a time. You can actually create multiple connections and cycle through them. But we've got one connection there. If you've never been in the instance, this will literally say website/port number/workspace SmartView providers out there. We're going to keep everything at the end there. So everything after the port number. So we're keeping workspace/SmartView providers. And we're going to put our URL right at the beginning of that. So the URL for our applications is going to go straight in there. If your URL is podname.oraclecloud.com, this is going to be podname.oraclecloud.com/workspace/SmartView providers. Okay, we've got our URL in there. Now we're actually going to get connected. So we're going to change over to our SmartView tab. And at the top left-hand side of your screen, you're going to have panel. As soon as you hit panel, you're going to have a bar open up on the right-hand side of Excel where you can select shared connections and private connections. Private connections we will talk about in a later session when we start looking at getting SmartView connected to OTBI. For right now, we're going to worry about a shared connection. We're going to click on shared connection, and you will be prompted to log into the instance that we just set up on the previous slide. You put in your username, you put in your password, you then get options to connect either to Essbase or Hyperion Financial Reporting. We're going to select Essbase here. As soon as we do that, we get a list of all the cubes that are out there. So essentially, these are all the different charts of accounts we have out there. You're going to say, Lee, that's an insane number of chart of accounts. This is a demo instance, so we do have a ton of chart of accounts out there. But we're going to select to the US chart of accounts. We're going to expand that out, and you're going to see DB for the database. We're going to select that, and then hit Connect. Tom, I got us connected. Now it's up to you.
All right, thanks, Lee. So we're going to talk about doing an ad hoc analysis. What is that? Ad hoc analysis is exactly what it sounds like. It is not pre-built. It's not something you have saved. It's something you're going to create theoretically one time. But the thing is, you can create this ad hoc analysis, and you can save it. You can reuse it. I will note you will see on this screen, you've got a few other screenshots on here. We will circle back to those later on at the end of this presentation to just talk relatively quickly about what they are and what they can do. So the main thing to remember on an ad hoc analysis is when you come in, you have to select some first things. So we're going to kind of talk through a couple of different ways, the way that I like to structure the data on this particular page. And the reason I like to structure the data that way is because this is really an accounting analysis, and it's just kind of the way that my mind thinks. It's not the way that you have to do it, but it is the way that I typically will go ahead and do it. I will also tell you, if you're doing an ad hoc analysis on projects data, or if you're doing an ad hoc analysis on cash position or cash forecasting, obviously your default values will look different. And in case you were not aware, you can connect SmartView to project accounting. You can connect SmartView to cash management. There are business areas out there that you can utilize, and if you have some questions or comments, you want to talk through those, obviously you can ask some questions at the end of this session, or you can reach out to Lee and I at our Afternoons with Aces handles. You can connect us with us on our YouTube channel if you need to, and we can certainly something that we could cover in a later session. So what I will usually do when I start my ad hoc analysis, I will click on the account. Account is a required segment in your chart of accounts. You have to have a natural account segment. It is typically called account. I will click on the Essbase ribbon, and then I will click on pivot. And what that will do is that will move the account out to the outside of my rows in my analysis. So you can see it looks like on the screen. In that second screenshot, you've got account in column A, and accounting period has been moved over to column B. I will then typically click on accounting period, a single click, and I will stress that. Anytime you hear this presentation and you hear us say click, that means a single click. If you double click in SmartView, it does do things. It can drill down to details, and you have seen that in our prior presentation on reviewing the SmartView or Essbase ribbon. So you want a single click. You're then going to click on pivot again, and what that will do is that will pivot it to the column. So that is now a point of view, and you can use that analysis. You can get a single period or a year within that.
So there is one of the things to be cognizant of. So the account was in our point of view, right? It was in the first row at the top there. We pivoted account out. That took us to our rows. We then pivoted accounting period out and took us to our columns. There is another option. If you want to get rid of it completely, in the where we've got pivot at the top there, where we were saying click on pivot, and every time we say pivot, everyone's always thinking of the episode of Friends. But rather than clicking on pivot, if you hit that drop down, you'll see pivot to point of view. So that would actually get rid of it completely out of your analysis and just have it as a constant across the top there. So it's something to just bear in mind there. Pivot will move from point of view to rows, to columns, to rows, to columns, unless you pivot to the point of view and get it out there.
Thank you, Lee. Excellent point as usual. Pivot. Always do that whenever we say it. All right, so there are certain fields, if you are querying on financial data, that are required. And these are important. These will actually come back and come to light again when we have our Financial Reporting Studio session later on this year. But if you do not fill these values in, you will not get any data back. So when you open up the ad hoc analysis, the first thing you're going to see is you're going to see a value that says missing. And that essentially means is you have not filled in enough information to pull back any data, so it is missing. There are no intersections or valid intersections that Oracle can use to return data. So the first one that I will typically fill in is my ledger or ledger set. Okay, so you can select that either from the drop-down list by clicking the 3 dots, or you could actually go to member selection as we did on the prior slide. You also have to select the scenario. Scenario is actual or budget or forecast. Now bear in mind, scenario is a user-defined value set. Oracle comes seeded with the value of actual, but you can add as many scenarios as is meaningful. This is particularly important, in my opinion, if you are using budgetary controls. What I like to do is I will have an actual scenario. I will have an original budget. I then may have an adopted budget, and then I may have an amended budget. And what that allows you to do is if you are using budgetary controls, as you do budget transfers or as you do budget updates, you always have the ability within your general ledger cube, not your budgetary controls cube, but you could do an actual versus budget, an actual versus amended budget. So having those budget scenarios is helpful.
Now, that's a great point for the public sector. So public sector will often have the budgetary controls areas out there. Other scenarios I've seen in the retail space, typically we'll see budget and multiple forecasts. So we'll say budget, this is what we think we're going to do for the rest of the year. And then you'll typically have either a forecast or a 3.9, 6.6, 9.3 kind of review of the budget. So you're changing what those projections of those budgets are going out once you've got a feel for the year. So the scenario, other than actual, really is a, I guess, industry by industry kind of case by case kind of thing of how you're doing those forecasting. And it could actually be you're not doing any of this stuff and you're thinking to yourself, that would be really cool if I could do that. Again, as Tom said before, if you want to talk about budgeting or forecasting, reach out to us on the ACE Uploading with ACE's YouTube channel or on any of our social media links.
One last comment on that, Lee. Some folks may want to update their budget or their forecast with actuals. So your forecast from January to December has some budget amount in it from January, February, and March. In March, you might want to replace your budget amounts with actuals. In EBS, you actually could do that using a mass allocation. You really can't do that in cloud. The only way you can enter budget data in cloud ERP is to use the budgetary spreadsheets. So you could certainly do that using formulas. I prefer to do that via reporting. We will typically have a hidden column with my year-to-date actuals and then my remaining forecast, and I'll kind of combine those two together. That works pretty well because you usually don't have to drill down or do analysis on your forecasted amounts. Other types you have to fill in. You've got to have an amount type. You've got an amount type of base. Essentially, base is used to tie to the period or balance amount. So if you're picking on an accounting period of year to date and you pick beginning balance and you say base, it will know to bring in your year to date amount. Other amount types you have are period to date, quarter to date, year to date. So why I bring that up is SmartView is a great tool, but it is only as good as the questions that you ask it. if you bring in a period to date amount and are looking to get a trial balance, you're going to get a period to date trial balance, no problem. If you're trying to create a balance sheet and you're bringing in a period to date amount for your balance sheet, that is not going to foot. It's just going to bring in your period to date activity. So you always want to make sure that you're bringing in the appropriate amount type based on the analysis that you are trying to create.
Yeah, Tom, I think we jumped over the balance amount there. So the balance amount, again, we're just going through them, I guess, in the same order that they're displayed. So the balance amount is typically, do I want a beginning balance? Do I want the activity that's happening that's happened, the period activity, or the ending balance? You can actually split those out even further. So if you want a really whiz-bang trial balance, for example, where you want to see the debits and the credits, you can actually break all three of those balance amounts down even further and go to, let me look at my beginning debit balances, my beginning credit balances as well.
Yep. Thanks, Lee. So you got your currency and your currency type. Your currency is USD. It is GBP. It very well could be stat. I will tell you that even though you can set up specific statistical accounts in Oracle, the tried and true method that I still prefer to use is I will use a currency of stat and keep those journal entries separate. And then, of course, finally, you've got your accounting period. And your accounting period comes out of the box if you put in your years. Whatever the hell your accounting period, Oracle will automatically create the hierarchy for you of year, quarter, and then months, and then weeks if you have those periods defined at that level.
One of the last ones we're going to go through, for that currency type you have out there, it actually kind of harkens back to one of our previous sessions where we started generating the reports and the account groups out there. A couple of the reports we will be looking at in the future. We'll actually see how Oracle built them or how we would look to rebuild them. Talks about a trial currency in a trial balance in the functional currency or a trial balance in the entered currency. This is exactly where it's pulling it from. Total currency will show everything that eventually gets back to that currency. Entered currencies will show you balances that were entered in that currency. They might have been converted into another currency later on, but I could still say in a US ledger, if I've been entering transactions in British pounds, an entered currency type of British pounds would bring back just those entries and ignore all that other US dollar stuff.
Okay, thanks, Lee. All right, so if you put in your required fields to return data, if everything is set properly, when I mean set properly, if the rest of your hierarchies are complete, you should get a 0 back. And I'm going to qualify that for a second. There are a couple different schools of thought on hierarchies. Some folks will tell you that you only have the values that you need in the hierarchy. So for example, let's assume you're creating a reporting hierarchy on your cost center segment. And one of your reporting hierarchies contains all your segments and they're stratified by region or wherever it happens to be. But then you're creating a different hierarchy for management reporting. And maybe that management reporting doesn't include all the cost centers. Some consultants would tell you to only include those values in the hierarchy that you need to report on. I fundamentally disagree with that. I think that if you do that, there is no easy way to know if your hierarchy is complete. I always prefer to have a complete set of values in my hierarchy. So if I've got a couple different parents that are for analysis, I'll put the appropriate values in there. And then with the values that I do not need, I will either have an additional parent called not needed or inactive or whatever it happens to be, or at the very least, I will add them to children underneath my T value so that they're at least included. If you do that, then that means if you have a 0, it means your hierarchy is complete and your trial balance foots to 0. That's what you want. Now, I'll take another swipe at my EPM brothers. They probably don't care as much in EPM if you have a complete hierarchy because they flip signs when they load trial balances. When they load a trial balance, by default, it won't foot to 0. And that's because they flip the signs and it doesn't add up. And that's why, again, ERP, by default, Oracle notes the account signs, it puts to 0. When people on Lee's team and my team do EPM, we do not flip signs. I like things to foot to 0.
The other thing to bear in mind for keeping all the values in the hierarchy, we're not just using these hierarchies for reporting. We can use them for allocations. We can use them for GL security. We can use them for currency revaluation, all that kind of stuff. So it really is important to, when you're doing all these hierarchies, and we'll stress this in a bunch of these sections. I know we go through it in the financial reporting sessions. We start going through, the hierarchy that I'm using, am I using it correctly? Is everything in there? Should someone still be able to use, look on this value even though it's a discontinued operation? From a financial reporting sense, sure. From a revaluation sense, maybe. But you start going through and start thinking about how these hierarchies are actually being used.
Okay, thanks, Lee. Okay, that brings us to optional dimensions. Optional dimensions are essentially your chart of accounts. The required dimensions are those dimensions that come seated with the Oracle ERP Cloud applications, and they will always be there. The optional dimensions are the ones that will come from your configurations of the Oracle environment. Okay, so as we said, these will vary by implementation. For each member, you want to click on the Essbase ribbon. You can click on the drop-down, or you can click on member selection, whichever one you prefer. As with Microsoft, as with Oracle, there's a lot of different ways that you can fill values in within SmartView. It really is a personal preference in which one you like. If you click on the drop-down caret next to the member, you can also select the ellipses, and you select your desired members. Now, the really cool things when you select your members, you do have some options. You can select them individually. You can select parents. You actually can use formulas to select your members. The formulas generally, I say generally, because you can certainly use those formulas within here in SmartView, but my experience is that the formulas generally become more important when you're doing FRS reports. So you're in your member selection. You can select multiple members at the same time using your Shift or Control key. You then use the right arrow to move them over. By default, your dimension name. So in this screenshot, you can see there is the value company up there. If you do not remove it, it will stay. What that means is if you have it selected on company, all of the dimensions below company are included by default. If you want to include all your child values or all your child values in specific dimensions, you can select those. The way that you would select formulas, that third icon on the right-hand side at the top, you've got a search criteria, you got a filter criteria, you then got that third icon at the top, which is how you would use functions. There are a lot of functions that are available within SmartView and Essbase. Just be cognizant, even though Oracle ERP Cloud uses Essbase, we are not using the full functionality. So things that you can do in Essbase in EPM or custom Essbase, such as creating attributes, for example, those are not available within Oracle Cloud ERP.
And that is an important thing to go through. So Essbase is a hugely powerful tool. One of the things that I did when I first started getting into cloud and Essbase, I went out and bought Essbase books, How to Become a Wizard in Essbase, and everything in there was written for Essbase, for SmartView. But it's from the EPM product. So I was reading all about creating attributes and thinking this is the coolest thing on earth. Yeah, we don't have that functionality. We have the ability to do reporting, but that's about it. So just be cognizant of any of that training material that you look at. If it's specifically for Essbase, just hold on to that caveat of that what you're looking at might just be an EPM. Certainly, if we're talking about it today, it's in EPM. There'll be stuff in EPM sessions that maybe don't make much sense for you in cloud applications.
All right, thanks, Lee. All right, so members and locations, it really doesn't matter per se. Lee was kind of indicating earlier about your point of view, and you can point it to a point of view, whether it's in a row or a column, or you can put it to your point of view so it's across the top of the page and it's kind of held constant. You can pivot balances, so you can see at the screenshot that we've got on here where we pivoted on ending balance, and as Lee said, you can kind of move those things around. What is important is once you get your format correctly set up, Essbase is actually pretty solid. What I mean by that is this. If you're not going to be inserting a lot of account values and it's not going to change dynamically, you can actually put Excel formatting in here, and we did cover that in a previous session, and you can get a pretty good looking report out of this. If you are going to be adding values and moving things around on a pretty frequent basis, then what you're going to want to do is you're going to have kind of Essbase as your feeder sheet, and you'll use like VLOOKUPs or something like that to bring in a really good looking report on a lead sheet. I will tell you again, Tom Simkiss and Lee Briggs approach, we do not like that. If you're going to be doing that, there's a really good tool within Oracle called FRS, Financial Reporting Studio. We're going to be covering that in a later session this year. that gives you, I think, a lot more flexibility and is a lot more user friendly. And again, that said, there's use cases for everything, right? So if you've got dynamic reports and really complex calculations, you can try to figure them out in FRS. Some things are meant for Excel. Oracle does support that, and it is kind of designed to do that.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. So formatting. If you use Excel formatting, then you got to format the entire column or row. This is a mistake I have made more times than I care to remember. So, I'll get a report with 5 lines on it, and I will format those 5 lines, and it looks great. And then I'll do a double click, or I'll drill down, or I'll do a pivot, and the original 5 lines or 5 cells stay formatted, but the rest of the report does not. So when that's to work, you really do have to add the formatting and do the rows and the columns. But once you do that, it absolutely works, and it does a really nice job, and it carries across. So you can get some good looking things. Other things to be cognizant of, and again, we talked about this on one of our prior sessions with the missing values and the zero values. They are somewhat annoying when you're doing your initial analysis, but they're really helpful when you're going through and building a report. Nothing is more frustrating than building a report and having missing values and not knowing it. Something else to bear in mind, just because a value is missing, if you say, oh, suppress missing values, it doesn't mean you'll always be suppressed. What do I mean by that? Well, let's assume that you have a connection or a cross-section, an intersection that did not exist in February. So you write a report and the cross-section does not exist in February, but it does exist in March. Well, if you create a report that has February and March across the top, even if you suppress missing values, that value is going to come in because in March it's there. It's an existing intersection. So what I typically recommend folks do is get your report built, be confident in your data, make sure that you feel good about it, and then you can always go into your Essbase or SmartView ribbon, go to your options, and have that missing display as a 0 or a dash, whatever you guys prefer.
And I think that the missing part and 0 part, really, there is no rule about it. It really is what you're looking for. So the missing or the suppressed zeros really works at a row level, but you really want to think, do I want to know about this if it's 0? So the best example I ever have is, if stationery expense is 0 for this month, do I really care? Maybe, maybe not. If cash is 0, that's a big problem. I need to know about it. So I don't want to just hide 0 everywhere. Got to be judicious for this. Well, am I expecting it to be there? Let me look at it. As Tom said earlier as well. So missing and 0 do mean different things. And there are different settings there for show 0, don't show 0, show missing, don't show missing. And as Tom says, it's got to apply for the entire row. So if it was missing in February and it was used in March, it isn't missing. You're going to see a 0 or missing in February if you're doing something with multiple periods out there. So just bear that in mind.
Thanks, Lee. All right. So what's an example of something you could expect to get out of SmartView? Well, so this here is a legitimate dashboard. This is from the demonstration environment. There's various versions of this kind of floating around there. The initial one that I saw, I guess probably about 6 or 7 years ago, was all green. Oracle released this one in the demonstration environment, I want to say, probably about 4 years ago. But what you have there in the table is a relatively stagnant set of data. It assumes that you're going to be using that set of data. You can change your periods. You can certainly change your accounts in there, but the way that the graphs are built, those graphs are Excel graphs, right? So they went in and they used standard Excel functionality to create some really nice looking graphs that are meaningful that you can do a few things with. As we talked about in our prior session, SmartView is not just for Excel. There is a SmartView plugin for Microsoft. So I could actually take these graphs and charts and put them in Microsoft Word. You could take these graphs and charts and put them into Microsoft PowerPoint using the Essbase copy and paste functionality. And you can just have those different prompts changed as needed. Obviously, this is a native Excel dashboard that you're looking at, and that's kind of what it's deployed for. But you can save this in combination with other reports in a report book and put it out as part of your month-end analysis. Very flexible, very friendly. and very quick. I will tell you that on a lot of our implementations, we have a number of our clients that Lee and I don't do, that we kind of go and do rescue projects that they're not used in SmartView. Whenever we do FRS training, Financial Reporting Studio training, before we deliver that training, we deliver the SmartView training. A lot of the concepts that you use for FRS, you use in SmartView. So it makes a lot of sense to master this ad hoc analysis before you move on to some of the more advanced things in FRS. Last topic we want to hit on for this session is Smart Slice and Smart Query. Those are different pieces of functionality that you can utilize in Excel and in SmartView. They operate similar to an ad hoc analysis, but not quite. You more or less go directly into a point of view format with those right away. I have not found a great use case for using them. I am sure there are EPM folks out there that are far smarter on this topic than I, that might be able to give us some good use cases for them. If you can, again, please reach out and let us know. You can always post some use cases and comments on the Afternoon with Aces channel. But that is beyond the scope of what we intended to cover today. We wanted to cover an ad hoc analysis. So what did we talk about today? We talked about getting your shared connection configured. We will talk later on in a future session about creating or configuring a private connection. Now, that will be a relatively short session, and the reason is once you create your private connection, for the most part, the functionality is exactly the same, but there are some key things with private connections we're going to want to hit on. We talked through creating an ad hoc analysis. We talked through filling out the required dimensions to make sure that you got things that you need so that you can get some data back. And then we talked through filling in your optional dimensions. At this point, we're going to open it up for questions. We did not have any so far through the session, but obviously if there are some folks out there with questions, please let us know.
And I guess the one thing that's always tricky in these sessions is we can show how to use a tool, but we can't tell you how you should use the tool. A lot of this is, it's a pivot table. It's a pivot table on steroids, don't get me wrong. It's live mounts, everything's cool there. We can show you how to get stuff into the pivot tables to get your analysis out there, but it really is on the user to kind of have that idea of, this is what I want to show. I've got an idea of, I want to see. I think in the example we had on the prior slide, it's kind of an income statement. I've got an idea for that, and hey, I want to be able to drill, have multiple periods out there, having trending, and I want to be able to drill down locations. That's the part where the analysis comes in. That's where you bring your expertise. Is okay, this is what I need to look at all the time. I can do that, but this is how to use the tool in order for you to get that. Okay,
thanks, Lee. I don't see any questions immediately, so what we're going to do is we are going to hang on for a few minutes and we're going to hand it over to the moderator. But if we don't get any, I do appreciate everybody's time as usual. This was a pretty well attended session. We have another one that's coming up. I think it's, we've been doing these about once a month, but I think this session is coming up a little bit sooner, only because it's a relatively short session, but it is important for going through and doing those private connections. I'm going to hand it over to the moderator and I'll talk to everybody soon. Thank you.